This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's community access radio station Plains FM 96.9 and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
So Circular.
Welcome to So Circular, a sustainability radio show and podcast discussing waste reduction and circular economy. I'm Anthea Medill of Remix Plastic, and this program is brought to you by The Rubbish Whisperer. Kia ora katoa, and welcome to episode 10 of So Circular. In this episode, we'll be discussing palm oil. But before we start, some good news. The government has declared tyres, electronic waste, plastic packaging, agri-chemicals and their containers and refrigerants as priority products under the new Product Stewardship Scheme. This means that there will be more responsibility put onto producers and manufacturers to deal with the waste and the environmental harm that these products may cause over their life cycle. This is So Circular. You can contact us with your feedback and questions through Facebook or Instagram using the tag @RemixPlastic or via our website, remixplastic.com. The warehouse has announced that it will no longer be selling coal. The retail chain has removed coal from their website and stores after concerns were raised by customers that it didn't align with the company's sustainability messaging. And today we're happy to have Helen Townsend from The Rubbish Whisperer with us. Morena, Helen.
Kia ora, Anthea. I'm quite excited about this episode on palm oil. Although we're not going to have much good news. I'll put that in as a warning before we
disclaimer
start.
at the start.
Yeah, but it's really interesting, and I learned heaps of things that I didn't know before. And palm oil is where I started my whole journey into single-use plastics, avoiding single-use plastics.
Not manufacturing.
No, not manufacturing them.
It's an interesting topic because it's one of the things that once you start looking into, you open a Pandora's box of problems. And so we're going to talk about some of those today, and hopefully there's some solutions in there. But yeah,
don't get your hopes up on solutions, but get your hopes up on lots of interesting information. So I'm going to tell you about how I started learning about palm oil. And it was back in 2010, and I learnt that the rainforests were being cut down for palm oil plantations. And I thought, well, I'm not going to have anything with palm oil. So I started reading the backs of all the packets when I was in the supermarket. And it was really slow and boring. And I realised that...
Supermarket shopping's already hard enough, eh?
Exactly. I realised that if I just avoided pretty much everything with single-use plastic packaging, then I would be avoiding palm oil, and that would be easier. And here we are today.
Years later. So a lot of these points we're going to delve into a bit more as well. So.
Yeah, and this is one of those episodes where we start off talking about palm oil and then we end up talking about quite a few other things because everything is connected.
So what is palm oil? So palm oil is an edible vegetable oil that's derived from the pulp of the fruit of oil palms. And it's highly saturated oil and is solid at room temperature, which makes it a really cheap and good substitute for butter. So oil palms are grown in tropical climates, and generally forests are cleared for plantations. In Malaysia and Indonesia produce 85% of the world's palm oil, and the deforestation in order to plant them threatens 193 endangered species.
Yeah, so the Indonesian rainforest is home to orangutans, which are the poster animal of palm oil substitutes and refusing palm oil. But also Indonesia, which is made up of quite a few islands, but it has elephants and rhinos and tigers and a whole lot of other interesting things.
It's a good megafauna.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff. And Malaysia, in a response to palm oil being avoided, has introduced a new slogan, which is "Palm oil is God's gift."
Oh, man.
Which I would think orangutans and elephants and
Would
tigers would maybe be classed as God's gift for palm oil plantation.
Oh, man. And so palm oil is estimated to be in about 50% of household products. So like you say, a lot of the stuff in the supermarket likely has palm oil in it. 3/4 of total palm oil produced is used for food, mainly cooking oil and processed oils and fats. And it's also used in cosmetics, cleaning products, and biofuel, which I only just recently learned.
Yeah.
And so for me, similarly to, as you said earlier, is that I just assume that any processed food has palm oil in it.
Yeah, which is pretty much a fair call because palm oil accounts for 35% of vegetable oils that are consumed worldwide. And it's the cheapest vegetable oil, like you said, but also it's stable, it has a neutral taste, and it provides a really good yield. So if you have a hectare of oil palms, you can get 4 tons of oil. And that's compared to like 0.6 of a tonne for rapeseed or 0.36 of a tonne for soy. So palm oil is great because you can get lots from a smaller area, which when you're talking about deforestation is good. But it's bad for so many other reasons.
Yeah. Oh, it's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, also some other oils, like, for example, sunflower oil, if you heat it to a high temperature, it produces trans fats, which are linked to cancer and heart disease. So
it's
there's
all
a
good
whole
news.
can of oily worms that we're opening.
Oily worms. So as we've stated in other episodes, circular systems provide solutions for these sorts of problems. And so the 3 principles of a circular economy are designing out waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating natural systems. So palm oil is a consumable, so it's a little bit harder to look at it through that lens, but there's still circular ways that we can reduce its impact that it has on the planet. And in this episode, we'll discuss some of these and what consumers need to be aware of when they're purchasing products.
Have you noticed how we are referred to as consumers and not citizens most of the time now?
Yeah, so this is really interesting, and I think we've talked about doing a whole episode on this, that there's a shift from, like, that began in the early 20th century that changed the way that individuals were defined and that they became consumers in a free market rather than citizens in a society. And that was kind of then embedded in, like, neoliberal politics.
Cool.
Let's talk about
big
this
words.
more sometime.
So in a few episodes, I'm going to learn what neoliberal politics means when we do citizens versus consumers. But I think that we're valued on how much money we spend and how much stuff we have. And I think perhaps also we're valued on how much packaged food we keep in our cupboards, because then we're contributing to society and spending money and providing food for people that is, you know, the acceptable food of our culture.
Yeah, I just had a vision of going around to friends' houses at school, and if they had, like, the good biscuits.
Yeah. My daughter has a friend who she likes going there because they have the best food.
Yeah.
Which is like noodles, 2-minute noodles.
The best food.
2-minute noodles are massively high in palm oil because the noodles are cooked in palm oil to start with.
And then all those little sachets of palm oily goodness.
Yeah, it's like a tub of palm oil.
What does palm oil have to do with a circular economy? So it's used in food, so it isn't a reusable thing, but there are opportunities to design out waste and pollution from the current system. So like anything, once it's produced on a scale, it can have large impacts on people and the planet. So I see it as having lots of similarities with cheap single-use plastic in that they're produced on a large scale, they often exploit people, and impact certain parts of the world, that they're artificially cheap and don't represent the true cost, and that they're used with, like, lots of processed food and junk food. And palm oil is used to make cheap mass-produced products that are shipped around the world.
Yeah. It's amazing that, like we were saying before, that everything is linked. And there are similarities between palm oil and single-use plastics. And we're going to talk more about processed food later, but in New Zealand, Whittaker's and Cadbury's don't use palm oil in their chocolate. So we can think, hooray!
Yeah, because when they did switch, there was a huge uproar.
Yeah,
hey?
So they took the palm oil out, or they didn't put it in. But they do use soy, and soy is grown in the Amazon and is the second largest driver of deforestation of the Amazon.
You can't win, can you?
No.
You can't have chocolate.
You can't just switch to a different oil and continue consuming at the same rate. And that's why palm oil is related to circular economy, because it's all about our consumption of things that we don't actually need.
Yeah. I mean, some would argue that we do really need chocolate. We just have to find a way to do it better.
We can talk about that in a minute.
That could be a whole other episode as well. And so, again, like other areas of sustainability, there's heaps of room for greenwashing. And I'm sure that anybody that's tried to start considering their palm oil consumption has been swallowed by this void of misleading information.
Yep.
And I think it's one of those things as well that as people become aware of the damage that palm oil can have on the environment, and they start trying to avoid it, then like the industries get better at like hiding it and stuff. So there's like 200 different names for the same thing, or like different versions of palm oil. So like some things might say vegetable oil and there'll be palm oil. So you could look at it and think that it's vegetable oil and that's okay, but it's actually palm oil.
Yep.
And palmate, sodium laurate, and then you can try and say that one.
So what about sterile trimethylammonium chloride?
Yeah, what about that? Or octadottylyl steroyl stearate.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you don't pronounce them quite like that.
No. I'm not a scientist. So do you think that is one of the reasons why there's so many names?
It's also because chemical processes make the palm oil different depending on how it's used.
Right.
So also I used to think that if it says vegetable oil, then it's palm oil, so I should avoid it. But now I'm thinking if I can't pronounce it, maybe I shouldn't eat it.
It's like a good life lesson, life rule, eh?
Yeah. If you want to see the full list of names for palm oil, you can visit the orangutanalliance.org, and there is an alternative names for palm oil where it lists all 200 of them.
Oh, good one. So
practice your chemical pronunciations.
And the link for that is on our website as well. As we said, packaged processed food often contain palm oil because it's a really cheap thing, a cheap ingredient to be used. And that 36% of the cost of New Zealand's diets is spent on unhealthy food and drinks.
Yeah, so this is interesting about whether we need chocolate.
Yeah.
So do I need chocolate or do
Just
I
really
need...
want it, I think.
Yeah, do I need that money in my wallet?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that that's a huge amount
36%, yeah.
The amount we spend on food is spent on unhealthy food and drink. So that means that stuff there's not nutritional value.
Mm.
And that's all stuff
that's all our fun money.
Yeah, could do something more fun.
Yeah. Like not kill orangutans.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in 2016-17, the New Zealand Health Survey found that children living in the most deprived areas were 2.5 times as likely to be obese than those living in least deprived areas. And this is generally because in the supermarket, junk food is really cheap. So, for example, $1 loaf of packaged bread in the supermarket, which doesn't really fill you up and has palm oil in it, versus a $5 bakery loaf that's locally made with no palm oil and is delicious. And so avoiding palm oil is a luxury in some ways.
Yeah, and this really shows that it is a systemic problem that we're dealing with, because we're not just dealing with palm oil in products. We're talking about social deprivation and obesity and income inequality and all those things as well. And the other thing is, if we make food from scratch, it's cheaper than processed food. But to make food ourselves, we need the luxury of time. And if we aren't paying people a living wage and people are having to work 2 jobs, or they have to commute a long way, or they have no flexibility in their work, and we have to buy all this stuff to keep up with everybody else, then we can't afford to have that time.
Yeah.
So if we can reduce income inequality, we could maybe decrease obesity and positively impact on palm oil plantations.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
That palm oil isn't actually the problem. It's all these other things.
Yep. Palm oil isn't the problem. The problem is the system that we have.
Yeah, and that's why we're here talking about it. Yeah. And that's the thing, making stuff from scratch is generally healthier because it's like pure ingredients and you can control what's put in it. So, for example, you could put like less sugar in foods rather than just having massively processed heaps of ingredient stuff.
Yeah, because if you look at recipes over time, recipes from like 40 years ago have less sugar in them than recipes now. So actually you can, use less and still have a good biscuit.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about biscuits.
As you do.
Yeah. And I was thinking about, we did that episode on fashion, so I was thinking about clothes. So like most people, there are some clothes in my wardrobe that don't fit me. And I was thinking that if I don't eat packaged food, it's a bit of a win-win because the processed food costs more than ingredients. And if I eat more packaged food, I will get fatter. And if I get fatter, I won't fit the clothes that are in my cupboard. So I'll be wasting those clothes. I'll have to spend more money to buy more clothes, which are bigger. They take up more wardrobe space. When I wash them, they're going to use more water and more washing powder and take longer to dry. So really...
This is a glimpse inside the...
If I don't eat so much packaged food, I could just wear the clothes that are in my cupboard already.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, like we say, everything is connected. And I find it easier to make stuff from scratch because then I don't have to go through that rigmarole of figuring out what I should be buying and what I shouldn't be buying. So, like... We've talked about this with recycling, is that if you're looking at a package and you have to figure out whether that package can go in the recycling or whether it can be composted or blah, blah, blah. It's the same with anything, is that then you have to, like we're saying, all these names, I have to look at it and then try and work out what the hell's in it. So it's just easier to avoid it and
I
make stuff
do
instead.
find that often living more sustainably is easier on my brain.
Yeah.
I don't have to make all these hard decisions.
Yeah. And I think that it's... one of those things that every once in a while you just have like a massive kick in the guts when you're starting. So like I started by trying to avoid single-use plastic and then palm oil came in after that. Mm-hmm. And so I was, like refilling my containers with an eco-brand laundry detergent. And then I found out that the eco-brand laundry detergent had palm oil in it. And so then I was like, if you want it done, you have to do it yourself. So then I had to make my own laundry detergent. So it's, you can't always trust what you think you are buying either.
No. And this is where it gets more complicated because there are products from palm kernels that don't need to be labelled. So you're never going to know.
Oh,
so
right.
The byproduct of palm oil production is palm kernel expeller, which is also called PKE. Mm-hmm. And this is what is left of the kernel after the oil has been extracted. And this PKE is used as animal feed and biofuel. So, in New Zealand, PKE is imported as a supplementary feed for dairy cows. And in 2018, we imported 2.2 million tonnes of it.
Wow.
To our grass-fed, lovely, natural dairy cows.
That's amazing.
And New Zealand is actually the biggest single consumer of PKE globally. And we take 30% of all the PKE produced.
Whoa.
And the second after that is the EU. So all the countries in the EU don't use as much palm kernel expeller as we use.
Wow.
Yeah. It gets worse.
That's heavy.
Can't carry
my
on.
gosh.
Okay. So PKE is especially important as a supplementary feed during drought. So that's why it's introduced to New Zealand. Mm-hmm. But there are other ways to farm that make your farm more drought resistant. So instead of planting like grass that doesn't do well in drought conditions, you can plant a diverse perennial pasture, and so if the roots go down further they can access more water and it's more stable, and this can increase the dairy farm's ability to withstand drought.
Yeah. And there are some places in New Zealand that are working on those types of things.
Yeah, and there are places that are seeing that they don't have to irrigate as much because their farm is more drought resistant.
Yeah, so that'll be better for them financially as well.
Yeah, and you don't have to buy in imported palm oil. Palm kernel.
Gosh.
And do you want to know how it gets there? So you don't need to say on your dairy products that the cows have been fed by
Right.
palm kernel, so you can't tell.
Right.
And it gets worse, and you're not going to like this at all, because Fonterra sources PKE from a company called Wilma International. And guess what they get up to?
Don't sound like they're the good guys.
They have been implicated in rainforest destruction, illegal burning, and social conflicts over community lands.
Oh my gosh.
And in 2012, they were ranked the world's worst company for corporate sustainability and environmental impact.
Wow, there's a world's worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't realise we were keeping a tally at that end.
Yeah, it's a tally of like the worst 500 companies.
Atrocities. Oh my gosh.
And they came out on top. So that's nice every time you're having a breakfast to think about that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so milk is one of those things that our household has had challenges with, finding a way to get around all of the problems with different things. So we swapped to oat and soy milk for a while, but then that came in Tetra Paks, and Tetra Paks aren't recycled in Christchurch. And so in the end, we decided to just reduce our milk use and buy in glass refillable containers from small dairy producers.
Which is not going to be cheaper.
Which is a luxury, yeah. So using less of it means that it's easier to switch. But, I mean, like it balances out in some way, but it's still a lot more expensive because it's like double the price per litre. But it's things like I have black coffee rather than having milk in my coffee. And we just have milk on our cereal in the morning.
Yeah. So I talk a lot about packaged biscuits on the program because they're not my vice, so it's easy for me to say we shouldn't be eating them. But I have never reduced my milk consumption. And even though I know it comes in plastic and all the issues with irrigation and dairying, and I've just found out about palm kernel. So it's hard. And